And next question. Why is death so bad? Because it's the end of life. Death is not the second worst thing that could happen to you. Death is the worst thing that could happen to you. To me, being dead means not being forever. People often tell me I'm afraid to die. I say, if I put a loaded gun to your head and started threatening you, would you be afraid? And they say yes. Well, then you're afraid to die. Still others tell me they're not afraid of dying, they're just afraid of growing old. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Growing old is the process by which you die. My objective was not to be frozen and come back. What I really wanted to do was to never die at all. In 1973, anthropologist Ernest Becker proposed the idea that individuals would be restricted if they could not find a way to overcome the fear of their own mortality. However, this question begs, what happens to those individuals who cannot overcome their fear, and instead attempt to transcend cultural norms by achieving immortality? From Errol Morris' First Persons documentary, I Dismember Mama, the true story of Saul Kent. One of my heroes has always been Dr. Frankenstein. I know a lot of people see him as some sort of a horror story. Oh, but to me, well, he's just misunderstood. I was involved in several of the early cryogenics organizations in the 1960s. I know what you would essentially do is you would take a person who was near death or dying, freeze their body down to about the level of liquid nitrogen, 320 degrees below Fahrenheit, mind you. And then you'd put them in this very large sort of, it's like a thermos. And then 100, 200, 300 years into the future, their body would be restored and rethought. Oh, but the body that you come back in will be far better than any 20-year-olds. Because you are not your body. You are your thoughts and your feelings and your essence. And if you could take that and put it into another shell, it would still be you. The name of the game is options and freedom. 500 years from now, there may be more differences than there are now between us and the apes. Not just radical evolution. Real evolution. We are going to be a new species. Now, talking about freezing someone is one thing. Doing it, well, that is another. My mother was about 40 years of age when she had me, and so she was already older than most mothers. And, you know, my father died when I was 10 months old, so I never really had one. So she was sort of, like mother and father to me. And, you know, she was a really good mother, and she taught me a lot. And that's really what I had in mind when I elected to have her frozen. She never really saw cryogenics as like a real career or a way to make money, but, you know, I do remember one of my very early freezings. It was this woman who had died in New York University Hospital, and I have to get up from dinner to go freeze her, and she goes, "Finish your pears." Oh, well, I was eating dessert at the time. A few years later, I'm much more financially successful, and, well, I elect to have her frozen. One morning I get this call from this woman who says she's seen my mother wandering around outside and she doesn't seem like she knows where she's going. I realize things had changed dramatically. Now she gets a little paranoid and she goes, "Well, I guess it's time to freeze me." She knew death was near. Then it's this call from this woman who says, my mother has recently died, and she is trying desperately to revive her. And now that's what the nurse said, but I decided at that moment to have her taken directly to the facility where she would be frozen. And that was the mistake in terms of dealing with the authorities. You see, the people who were freezing her were really quite qualified to do so, but it was seen as a conflict of interest. The same people who were freezing her were also pronouncing her dead. My mother was a neuro patient. We'd elected to have essentially just her head frozen, because it's far easier to freeze a head than it is the entire body. So on that day, her head was removed surgically from her body. And now, mind you, 12 hours after she dies and 12 hours after she's pronounced dead. And of course, 4 years and 12 hours after she actually begins to die. And then it's these two men at my doorstep. Excuse me, sir. Can we have your thoughts on the recent story in the Riverside paper? And I said, sure. What's this all about? And they asked if I'd read the story. And I said, no. It said, although Dora Kent died of pneumonia, coroners are looking into the possibility that she was still alive when her head was removed. Huh. Within hours, there were camera crews at my house. There were camera crews at the coroner's office. There were camera crews at the hospital. It was a 3-ring circus. 4-ring circus. Oh, there were many rings in the circus. And then it's this call from someone who says they got police engines, they got fire trucks, they got, I don't know, everything in the world. And they have a warrant to autopsy my mother's head. Oh, except for one problem. They didn't know where it was. Nobody knew where my mother was. Oh, she was safe. And she was secure. Oh, she was not there. And then it's this call from these people who says they want to defrost my patients, they want to throw people in jail, but they didn't do a damn thing. They were just posturing, flailing their arms and playing cops and robbers. The truth is, they never charged anyone with anything. Not even a speeding ticket. But when my mother comes back, first of all, they're going to have to give her a new body. Because her old brain doesn't have one. The new one they put it in may be even younger and more beautiful than her old one. It'd be a kind of reunion that has never happened before. Those of us who survived the transition will remember what it was like to have traditional relationships between mother and son, between lovers, between friends. We may at some point become less like mother and son and more like friends. Oh, it's all going to be very, very different. What would I say to her now? Mama, now we're in paradise together. And we're going to try for the next form of paradise. It worked. It really worked. 200 years ago, they tried to slice your brain into pieces, and here you are. Alive. Where is she now? I'd rather not say. I'd just rather not. There's no statute of limitations on murder, and so it is not a good idea. Maybe in 100 years.